And I can put that on my wrist, bring up this other part, open the clasp, and got my bracelet on just that quick and easy. Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to my shop. In this video I'm going to show you how I make this bracelet assistant or helper for taking the bracelets on and off your wrist. I wear a bracelet myself and I don't change mine very often, but the ladies, they wear different styles all the time and like to change them frequently. So I'll show you how I make this, and I make them out of all kinds of different materials. It's a very easy project to make, and I'll show you how we do it. Okay, this is the Penn State Industries Bracelet Assistant Helper. The item number on this is PKBHOLD. And it comes in this package, plastic Ziploc package, and all these parts in here, which includes some instructions, and all these parts, all except for the two brass tubes, everything's wrapped in individual little Ziploc bags. And I'll sort these out in order of assembly here. Now in the instructions, it gives you a parts list, how to prepare the blanks, mounting the bushings and turning the blanks, and then assembly, assembly is kind of on the back side of the instructions here, so it's two-sided, 2 pages. And if it doesn't come with your kit, you can always go online and download these from PSI. Okay, so I've got all the pieces out of their little packages and lined up in the order of how they're assembled here. You have your clip end, which is the business end. Then you have a coupler sleeve that once this is all pressed together in the body, this presses onto this end. You'll have your parts, wooden part or acrylic body here. Then this part will press into this tube once that's assembled. This is a center band that goes between the two bodies. Then this is the end cap that goes in at the end. What you need to do is to pick out a piece of materials that you're going to use to put this together with. I picked out a piece of acrylic here. It's a white with a black thread swirl through it, and I measured these and cut them to be the same lengths as the tubes. I've cut them on the bandsaw already to length, and what I do is I want to match up any patterns or wood grains, so I'll make this kind of mark here as a reference for when I put it on the lathe, that I match these bodies up, and I try to keep these matching together all the time, so then when things are assembled finally in the end, it'll all look like it falls together and the patterns go together. So pick out body of your choice. Then of course you're going to need a lathe in order to turn this on, and you're going to need a 7mm Penn mandrel. This one is an adjustable one, which is what we recommend if you're going to use or do a variety of different kinds of turning with pens and other things, is to have an adjustable mandrel. That saves you a lot. And then there's bushings that go with this. The bushings are the PK Hold BU. That's a 3-piece set. Got 2 pieces, and one in the center is slightly bigger. And one, the small one, goes on first. Then the one bigger one goes in the middle. And then the small one on the end again. And this holds the body together, as you'll see later on the lathe. Then on the very end, once you got everything mounted up on the lathe, use this Mandrel Saver, which is infinitely adjustable for the length of your material that you're working with. This saves a lot over the old version, where we used to use a bunch of mandrels for spacers and so forth and brass knobs and try and tighten it up to get that snug. And then we'd use the 6-degree conical thing in the tailstock. And the problem is if you got too much pressures going on here, you wind up bending your shaft a little bit, which would give you problems about how your parts would match up and wouldn't come out correctly. So these Mandrel Savers and these adjustable mandrels are really the way to go if you're doing a lot of work. Now when I get my blanks cut, I need to mark centers on my pieces. So I use this, go around it 4 times, because none of these are, perfectly square all the time. Try to hold this center finder in a consistent manner. As you can see, perhaps there, these lines, are some spaces between them. So what you do is you find a center between them and mark that with a scratch awl. And that where you line up your drill bit when you get to the drill press to drill the hole through the body. Also, you're going to need a 7mm drill bit for drilling through these blanks. The type of drill bit you want to use, if you're using wood, you want to use a brad point drill bit. If you're going to be drilling acrylics like these I did here, you're going to want to use an acrylic drill bit. And acrylic drill bits are quite different than the wooden drill bits. If you use a wooden drill bit with these acrylics, you're going to likely ruin the piece, crack it, and blow it out. So it's a lot better to have the acrylic bit if you're going to do that. You're also going to need a 7mm barrel trimmer, which looks something like this. This is a barrel trimmer, but the part I've got in here, this is for like a 10mm. I have to change this out and put in a 7mm. But that's what a barrel trimmer is. That will fit into the end of the piece through the brass tube, and it'll trim up the ends so they're square to the barrel. That way you don't have any funny gaps and openings when your pieces are all assembled together. Additional tools you may need, for cutting the blanks, for marking your centers, like the center finder tool I've got. I've got another video out there about how to find center for woodworkers. And then drill press for drilling holes through the blanks, and then getting these tubes glued into the blanks, as we'll cover as I go along here. Here at the drill press, I've got this mounted up in this jig here for vertical drilling, my Rockler jig. One of my other videos shows you how I mounted all this up and how it works, and it works pretty nice since I've got it mounted there. It gives me a lot more precision, it seems like. So, just drilling this through. It's an acrylic bit, got a sharp point on it, and it goes through. You have to stop periodically, let the bit cool, because you get the acrylic too hot, it can melt, disform, and if you go through too fast and hard, you can blow out the other end and crack it, and that ruins your piece. So, slow and easy. A couple minutes to cool. It takes about 3 minutes to cool. I'll finish getting through this. Yeah, that's gone through. Now, see, we got the hole all the way through, both ends, and no blowout or tears. My next step is to insert the brass tubes into these blocks that I've drilled. For that, I use a tube insertion tool that I will put the tube on, put some glue on it. I use a medium CA glue. Then once the glue is, I put on a couple strips of glue on this. Then I will slip it into the workpiece, and that will hold it in place. That way I don't get any glue on my fingers. Okay, I've got the tube on the tube insertion tool. I'll put a couple of strips of the CA glue on the brass tube. Slip it in, give it a little bit of twirl. I have a piece of spare paper towel around. Just make sure I can get this pressed in so nothing's sticking out there, and wipe off any excess. Then the next tube and body, a little bit of glue. Wipe the ends of excess glue. That looks good. We let that glue dry for about 5 minutes or so. Then we'll be ready to go square up the ends with the barrel trimmer. Have this body part mounted up in this vertical drilling jig on my drill press, and I've got the barrel trimmer mounted in the chuck. And what I will do is turn it on and then turn it and then bring it down. Very slow and easy. This is a carbide tipped barrel trimmer. It's only got 2 blades on it compared to some others that got 4 that are steel rather than carbide. But this cut's really good. The habit is to go slow and easy, because if you go too fast and hard, you're going to do some damage to your piece. You may have to make a new one. Now we'll trim this down until I see the brass at the end of the tube getting shiny. Okay, I see the shiny end of the brass. Take this out, flip it over, and do the other end. Make sure I'm lining up well again. There we are. See the shiny end of the brass. And that's how we have the shiny end there. Worked good. Now I'll do that with the other piece. Okay, so here at the lathe, I've got my Penn mandrel installed here. I look for that mark that I put on there, and what I want to do is turn that so it's going to be at the center, and then I'll match the other piece up to it too. Then I put on the center bushing, which is a larger one than the other end, and I've got my mark here too for aligning up these pieces here for the patterns. And then finally the last end bushing. Then I'll bring up the tailstock to the end, tighten it down to the bed, tighten the quill just a little bit, like maybe a quarter turn, just snug this a little bit, not very tight, barely finger tight. Slide up my tool rest here, get a space there, to me about a finger's width there for me. Then pick out my lathe chisel, and I want to do is adjust the height of my lathe chisel here. So I've got this, where this point is coming straight out at this, and then if I set my lathe chisel on here, I want the edge of my cutter to be lining up with that edge. So my height is a little bit high. I'll just drop it down a little bit, and that should be pretty good about there. Now I'll crank this up and start turning it. I want to first get the pieces down to an even round cylindrical shape, and then I can start shaping it whatever shapes I want to use. I'll put on my face shield. Since this is acrylics, it's much more prone to exploding in your face for you. You definitely want to have the face shield on when you do acrylic. And I'll crank this up to around 3,000 RPM or so, 3,500. Maybe around 4,000. Okay, I've got these down to a pretty good round, so from here I'll start shaping them. Given that this is acrylics, I'm not going to make any real fancy shapes or anything to it, because the sanding and finishing part with acrylics is much more difficult than it is with wood. So I'll make simple shapes out of these. Okay, that's looking pretty good there. Feels fairly smooth, so from here I can start doing the sanding, or the wet sanding. Next step is to do the wet sanding here. I use a little bit of water in a dish, and these acrylic wet sanding pads goes from a 600 up to a 15,000 grit. I'll start this up and turn it down to about a RPM around 1,000 to 1,500. Right about there. I put a rag across the bed here to protect my bed from the water so it doesn't get all rusty. And it's just a matter of working along here and sanding this down through all the grits. Occasionally rinse off my sanding pad. I like to get it so it's got some of this suds here, so to speak. That's looking pretty good. I'd try to watch for any grooves or lines that are caused by the edge of the sanding pads. You have to be careful about that. That is stuff I'm getting on the sanding pad here. They call that a slurry, and that's what you want to be able to get. Okay, next step up to the next grit. Okay, getting down to the last sanding pad. This gray one is the last sanding grit, and this is like about 15,000. That's looking good. Really very shiny. Next step is I'm going to put the buffing wheel on and buff these. Find and put in my buffing wheel here. I put in this 60-degree cone for the tail, and it fits into this end of this here. To give that support, snug it just a little bit. Not much, because we don't want to be flexing or bending the shafts. So. Okay, what I'll do is crank this up and a little bit higher RPM, around 3,000 perhaps. I'll put some of this buffing compound on here that's blue. Pushing with. And I just buff these wheels, or buff these pieces. Buff them off on the dry wheel. That gives them a very highly polished surface. The other piece. Okay, got my two pieces here, and I'll figure out how my parts line up again here. Okay, well, I'll get it figured out here. For assembling this now, got these parts laid out in order here. This is the clip end, or the business end as I call it. This is the first union that this clip slips onto, and then this goes into the body. This is the center ring, and then this is the end cap. So I'll assemble these together. As you remember earlier, I was having some trouble trying to figure out how to match these parts up, but I finally figured out that these bushings are different sizes. The middle one is bigger than the end ones. So if I match these two ends here together, I know that's the center, and these two pieces go together. This other way, it's a little bit smaller and doesn't line up correctly. So this is going to go together in this order. So I will press this business end on first. Line this up. So that spring load holds that there. Get this fairly centered on the press, and then start pushing it together. If it twists on you, gets out of place on you, just kind of rotate that a little bit, and then it lines up. Then the center band goes on. Kind of awkward to try and hold this while I get this tensioned up and adjusted, and then I can press that on. Then the other end goes on here. It's adjusted. Okay. It's all lined up here. Press it. Okay. Then lastly, the end cap. That lined up. Get fairly straight. Okay. Got that on. Then it's a matter of putting the clip on. Okay, so I found this to be really quite tight fit getting this on here. It was really hard to squeeze it on. So what I did is I found a punch in my toolbox and pushed it on, and it's got where this body enlarges here. So I pushed it on it up to that point where it enlarged this opening here. That made it so it will slip onto here, and it's very snug and tight. That works great. Okay, so how to use this bracelet holder. What I do is I take the loop end of the bracelet, and then the other end has got the clasp on it. That is a mechanical part that opens up. So I take the loose end and put that in the clip. So the clip is holding it like that. And I can put that on my wrist. Bring up this other part, open the clasp, and got my bracelet on just that quick and easy. Very nice. Thank you for watching this video. If you got something out of it and you enjoyed it, please give me a like and share it with your family and friends. If you want to see what I may come up with next in the future, please subscribe. Thank you.